this computer. Good morning, Julia.
Good morning, Leslie.
How are you?
I'm very fine, as they say. How about you?
Yes, I'm good. I'm good. It's the day after Easter bank holiday, so I'm feeling quite relaxed, which is good. Had a little bit of time off, and yeah, which is nice. So today we were going to talk a little bit about your background, why sheep, why textiles, and then have a little bit of a look at some of your artwork.
Okay, lovely.
Could you tell me where it all began? Why do you think you started becoming an artist, and then why you then went into textiles?
Well, the becoming an artist was a mixture of things. In a way, it was all around me with my parents and living up in the country and so on. And we all made and mended after the war. There was no such thing as anything new. So there was always inspiration and a chance to borrow materials or beg them or learn how to use a tool. A lot of it was experimentation. But then actually, once I grew up, I didn't have an intention of becoming an artist. The notion of being a penniless artist, which was very loudly shown by my grandmother, was not a really encouraging example. And my mother had had to give up working as a professional artist because she was married into the Royal Navy, and it wasn't done for women to continue working and so on. So, you know, there weren't two very strong examples there. So in fact, I started off in industry using languages. And then I worked for a woman who became very well known, Eleanor MacDonald, and she spearheaded the original equal opportunities legislation. And I worked with her both voluntarily and in her practice as a consultant. And then family, and then children, and then moving to the country. So it all kind of potted on. And I got involved with setting up voluntary groups. And I've realized actually that naturally I'm probably a disruptor, but I never saw it as disruptor. I saw it as being plonked in moments of change and then actually just kind of steering the group that I was working with through change. So then the art really came about. But to go back, animals were the continual thread, either drawing them, loving them, looking after them, being involved with them. That was an on-off all the way through. Even at boarding school, we were allowed to keep our own ponies, and I couldn't afford one. So I helped everybody else look after theirs, you know. So it was as much the care and the touch and the smell and so on of animals that appealed to me as anything else. So then we went on to when my husband died, and he actually died quite young at about 56. And I elected to stay on with the land and the house because I didn't feel the girls were ready to move from there. And I don't think I was either. So I started by keeping some meat sheep, and that was a really lowering experience. So after going to a few agricultural shows, and this shows actually the extraordinary educational merit of those shows, because you can go and put your hands on, you can talk to people about what they're breeding, what they're like, you can see if you like their smell, if you like, you know, because all that counts if you're going to look after them. And so anyway, I fixed on Wensleydale Longwools, and they do look magnificent when they're in the show ring with their great long rasta locks, and they have extreme presence and so on. So I started with 2, and they had a lamb each, and I went on. And so really the sheep was happenstance. And it was a way of bringing together my curiosity and my genetic interest and the fact that they were a rare breed and that their wool was wonderful and acknowledged to be wonderful. So that's how it all started.
So you didn't really get into making until that fortuitous happening of getting these long-haired sheep.
That's right. Not a hair, not a hair. It's a fibre.
Long fibre, sorry.
Long fibre, or a long lock. In their case, it's a long lock because they are literally twisted locks. I don't know.
Yes, I've seen them at your house, and you can see the effect of those long curly locks in your artwork as well.
Yeah,
they're really, that shape resonates, doesn't it? Yes, it's terminology, isn't it? Language. You said you started out in language.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, and what happened was a group of us, 4 or 5, got together in the southeast, all who were producing Wensleydales, and we decided that we would help one another. We would really try and pass on skills either through the guild membership or various other ways, or informally, because sheep breeders up in Yorkshire don't pass on knowledge. Oh, come on, Bert, can you just tell me what you feed them with? Do you give them extra minerals? Nah.
They were keeping it all very tight to their chest.
Very tight to their chest. So we had to kind of find out for ourselves. That's what opened the door to visits to, for instance, Vauxhall City Farm, to their spinners group, to learning dyeing techniques through their dye garden and their dyeing group, and so on and so on. It cumulatively grew. So after 2000, I would say that's when it all began to really move along.
So such an organic kind of evolution of, you can see the fact that you had this natural affinity with the animals, but a bit of an aversion to becoming a starving artist. And actually, obviously, the world said, no, you're going to be an artist anyway, but we're going to make you do it disruptively.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I can see you as a disruptor, because you're a bit like me. You're a high innovator. You see something and you don't think about the box. You just think about what else you could do and how you could change it and how you could do something completely different. Or you don't even see that there was something there to change. You just come in with your own unique idea, like the sheep to shawl project.
Yes, you see, that grew out of it. I mean, in a way, the link was the watercolor, because the first thing that kind of exploded into existence after my husband died was being able to use color in a way that I never had before. As a child, all you got given was sugar paper and some ghastly poster paint. And, you know, it was chalky and opaque, and it had no character. And trying to paint with that was just kind of, don't let's bother. Drawing was fine. That was fine. So that then grew, and so I started off with the watercolor, and that morphed into including the poetry. And then that opened the way to the dyeing, because I'd kind of established my color harmonics, because I think we all have a unique harmonic within color range and color tone and so on. And it's how we use that and how we explore. And then maybe we will morph into 3D or whatever else it was. So it wasn't as though I wasn't on a path. I wasn't on a mission. I was just exploring.
Yes, it was truly organic. It just kind of, each step just kind of evolved from the next one, and whatever happened to you in your life experience at that time. Shall we have a quick share of your website so you can show us some of that work as well? Let's just see if I can share your website. Sometimes it doesn't let me do this. Just going to yeah, just give me a minute.
It was there, it's vanished.
It was definitely there. Yeah, no, it's coming, it's coming. I found it. There we go. Sometimes it just takes me a moment or two to find it. There you are. You can see it now in full technicolor.
Oh, good Lord. Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So this is your gallery. And as I was saying, you can see those slight lock shapes here on this wheel. So talk us through talk us through some of these pieces that we're looking at here.
Okay, well, the one in the middle, the center of the 9,
This one here.
That's called Joseph's Technicolor coat. And that's a combination of the greys, because in the South we are lucky enough to be able to every so often produce a grey, silver grey or mid-steel grey animal. It's not something you can breed to because it's a recessive gene within a recessive gene pool, but you can accept the gift. And the silver greys are absolutely good. My favorite ram was silver grey, and I absolutely loved him to bits. He had a wonderful temperament. So in a way, all that's inside that piece of work. And then that was the beginning of the dyeing and using plants. I've never used chemical dyes, and I try never to use mordants. A mordant is a chemical form of aluminium. It's aluminium, actually. And for some people, they find that's their way into brighter colors and so on. But so far, I've managed to create with substantive dyes, which naturally don't fade anyhow.
Right, and they're made from plants?
From plants. You pick the plant, sometimes you dry it, sometimes you use it fresh. You then steep it in water for quite a long time. And very often you have to use quite a high amount to the amount of wool that you're using. So for me, that doesn't really matter. And I'm not trying to sell any of my dyed stuff because I don't consider that I really know enough about it. And so I dye for my own pleasure. If I'm dyeing yarn, then what you do is you put a few sacrificial locks in to begin with, and then those are what I take out and keep in my color palettes. So the color palettes are something that I've developed over a long time. So I now have about 14, I suppose, boxes, big boxes, which have all kinds of different shades and tones of one color in.
So this piece that we're looking at in the middle of the centre of 9, is that a wall hanging that you've...
Yes, it is. Yes,
and talk us through how you created it. So we now know about the colours, that you've naturally dyed those. And do you start off with a set of... do you choose the colours first, or do you start making a piece and then it evolves?
No. I start with the base, and that's a bit like laying out a lasagna. So you lay it out so that not the locks, you have to prepare. I think on my short videos you'll see carding, you'll see all kinds of things going on to create these bats, and the bats like a long length of interleaved fiber that the combing and the carding has allowed you to create. So you've made the first stage in a fabric, but it's still quite loose and bouncy and hasn't got any kind of, close consistency. So you lay that out, perhaps 3 layers or so. For these wall hangings, I tend to make quite a thick base. So it's nothing like a Nuno felt, which is very fine, gossamer thin and all the rest of it. This is quite a strong, substantial piece of textile, because it's going to have to hang vertically without losing its shape, and also it offers the opportunity to create a depth when you start putting the locks in. So that's all done dry to begin with. Then I might start playing around with some locks, because very often I might have a concept in my head, like the one up on the left, top left. That's called Prescription for Joy, and that was made during lockdown, and it's quite a long piece actually, which you can hang vertically or horizontally, and which is it's based on a wildflower meadow in a very, very loose kind of way, but it's that feeling of exuberance, of nature offering one joy at a time of mixed emotions and held emotions, so that you have an opportunity to express them. So shall I move on to another one?
Yes, talk to us about the wall hangings. You layer them up, you were saying, and then you start introducing locks. And then at what point do you start felting
Right,
those?
okay, well, all this with the tools that I've got, all this starts the needle felting process.
Mm.
So it gets to a stage where I can pick it up and it won't fall to pieces, and things won't drop off. And then, in fact, I do a wet felted next stage. And I do have a flatbed felter, which is, it doesn't create felt, it creates a pre-felt. So it's not fully fulled or shrunk, and it never will be. Okay, because it doesn't need to be.
No.
And if you full it completely, that's like if you're making a pair of slippers.
Yes.
And you want it not to move at all. But this has the opportunity to breathe and have life in it in a way that is, I find, much more satisfying. So then I will go back to needle felting more. Then I will, that includes turning it upside down and re-needling it from the back several times so that you get the consistency in depth. And finally, I will back sew it.
Right. What does that entail?
That entails a very long needle, a very sore finger, and and using up all kinds of odds and ends of the yarn in similar colors. So that it's like threading the needle through very lightly so that you don't actually see it afterwards. You don't see it on the back and you don't see it on the front. And as you pull that needle through, you're also consolidating the piece. So that will shrink it, but very minimally. I mean, really not a lot, but you can tell the difference in the stage of just the 1, 2, 3, dry, wet, dry, and then the final stage of the sewing.
And then after that, is there any fixing goes on? How do you preserve that so it doesn't deteriorate in the future?
It won't.
It won't, because it's all natural fibre.
It's all natural fibre, and I've used natural soaps, and I haven't used a mordant, which I think doesn't improve the life of the fibre. So, you know, there's really nothing to deteriorate it except rank sunshine.
Yes.
You know, which can be a bit too brutal. But having said that, you know, I've got pieces that I made some years ago and they haven't budged.
No, so you wouldn't advise people hanging them in direct sunlight, but they shouldn't be badly affected by that.
No.
And what about keeping them clean? Because obviously they're open to the air. How would you go about cleaning?
Well, you can take now that I've developed these block canvases with a framer's original help of the concept, then they're fixed on with what are called double bridge pins, which I found they're like upholstery pins, and so you can then take them out, take the piece off the block canvas, or what you can do is you can just lightly take one of those textile curtains, cold steamers over them, and that'll take any dust off or anything else. What you don't do is hoover them.
Don't hoover them.
Hoover them. And come back to me.
Yes, because otherwise you'll be going back to have it all re-stitched back in, wouldn't you?
Which would be somewhat impossible, really.
Yeah. So don't hoover them, but they are a natural thing. So yes, dust will get on them, and moths presumably as well. Do you spray them?
Well, moths I'm merciless about, and before they're mounted, I will spray the back of them with a fairly chemical moth spray. And again, I found that doesn't damage them in any way. You can use all the combinations of oils you can find. And the main thing is just really to take a good look. you know, I'm freaky about moths, and I've only got to see one flutter in the house, and I'll pursue it to its bitter end. So, so you
Yes.
just keep your eyes open.
Yes, yeah, and keep your moth sprays and everything like you would normally in your
Yeah,
house. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. That's and actually, what's interesting is that some of the naturals that I use, because one I use for fixing a color, which I throw into the dye bath, and that's pomegranate. Pomegranate rind, which has been dried, perhaps submitted to heat, but really dry. And you then crush it up and you can add it into your dye bath solution. And that is a fixer of color. But it's also being tested now, mostly in India and in Chinese textile factories, for its antimicrobial properties. And they are deep into researching antimicrobial properties for wool, silk, cotton, etc. And what they found is that pomegranate is one of the things that has a longevity in the material. It's very interesting.
There's a lot of research into textiles now because of the sustainability, isn't there? Because
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
fashion. I think the fashion industry has been historically one of the most unsustainable industries. So
Yes, yes,
um,
totally.
yeah,
Well,
there's a lot of research into sustainability around fabrics.
yeah, for anybody who's interested, go on to a site called Fibershed, spelled Fiber, and there's fibershed.org. They started in the States, two women 20 years ago. They have been living and working for closing the circle from agriculture through fashion. And they've made such incredible progress. And I really have admiration for that kind of tenacity, which is much bigger than themselves. And it's now gone global, and it started in the UK. It's all come back onto the International Wool Textile Organization. You know, really a lot of steps have been taken in the last couple of years.
Your fashion, I'm looking at one of your shawls here, one of your beautiful cardigans, is very sustainable because it's all part of the same chain, eco chain of your sheep and
Yeah.
your patterns, then your wool made into these beautiful garments as well. Absolutely
Mm,
stunning. And they are
mm,
so, I can advocate for this because they are so warm, and you look glamorous, and they are absolutely
mm.
but they're quite cool in the summertime as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And that's partly to do with the stitch.
Yes.
If you have a worsted spun yarn, which is what I do, by the only person in the UK who happens to be 6 miles away in Horham, Roger Mobsby, through Diamond Fibre Spinning Mill. I mean, he is a master in his own art and science, and that kind of worsted spinning is a combination of art and science.
Mm.
It's mathematical, but it's also, you look at it and you think, I think that needs a fractional adjustment. So I was just so lucky. I would never, ever have got to where I've got to without the input from these wonderful people on the way. I think it's really important to honor the teaching that we've had and not worry about whether we have been totally original in that particular moment. You
No,
know, you know,
absolutely. It's the network, isn't it?
it's the network, it's the passing on of skills, and then you run with what you've been given. And your direction of running will never be quite the same as somebody else's.
No,
It,
absolutely.
you know, it's wonderful.
I'm going to just stop sharing because I know that your particular art practice goes through not just textiles, but through poetry and through painting and watercolor. And I think that's a conversation for another one of these videos. Otherwise, this video is going to be about 4 hours long. But I think it's really nice to just focus. We've just focused in on the textiles this time, and really got a much better understanding of what your process and the materials you use and the thought process and why the organic evolution. So thank you so much for sharing that with me, Julia. It's been absolutely fascinating and I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, so Vi, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Bye, everybody.